Did you know that it has been 4 years since Chainsaw Man started? 4 years since this story kickstarted this roller coaster of emotions for us all. I'm sure you have some very powerful core memories of what this story has given you. Certain scenes, certain dialogues, certain character moments, or even just art pieces from the manga itself. It has given a lot. It has done a lot. And while the 4 years of content doesn't necessarily line up with only 120 odd chapters, the journey itself has been nothing but memorable. And a great place to kind of reflect and look back on the beginning of the story, some moments within it, and where we are now with part 2. I'm sure you all remember specifically Chainsaw Man's very first chapter. Not necessarily how it actually works, but more so your thought process going into it, how you felt within the moment while reading it. Because you see a title like Chainsaw Man and it sticks out, because you think this title is so goofy and so out there and simple that there's no way the story could be so thought-provoking, so emotionally driving and so powerful. Yet it proves everyone wrong, while still sticking true to itself. It doesn't shed their goofy nature, instead it actually embodies it, and you see it unravel itself within the first chapter. The goofy, fun, lovable moments within it mixed with this depravity, this depressive nature and torturous overtone that feels very suffocating. But then it's also mixed with this chaoticness, this otherworldly, high-octane action that feels so refreshing. I would like to say when you take the contents of the first chapter, the experience that it writes for you, and combine it with your initial impression of just the title of the story, creates a very powerful foundation for what's to come, for your opinion, for your emotion, and just overall thoughts of what this story could potentially be. And potential is the key factor here. Potential is what keeps your story alive. Potential is what keeps your story from being cancelled, and Chainsaw Man had a plethora of it. It came out swinging, but respectfully. It didn't shock the world in some unique fashion, but it done what it wanted to do, and it got people hooked. But see, even if you felt comfortable, even if you felt like you knew what Chainsaw Man's story was, because it's just quote-unquote another weekly Shonen Jump story, you couldn't be more wrong. And this new alluring nature of what Chainsaw Man was started to appear. That with the beautiful experience that it could provide, it was very unpredictable. Fujimoto, as an author, was unpredictable up to this point. And even if you had a run-in with his previous works, you didn't know how that was going to be structured for a weekly Shonen Jump story, which is something he has never done before. So that mysteriousness, that unknown lingers. And very quickly, Fujimoto would capitalize on top of that. He would take you off guard. He would throw you off course and have all of these curveballs in places so you couldn't predict any of the story or any of the characters. And this would provide a very refreshing experience in a wave of very similar stories. The way it's read, the way it's felt, the way it progresses, everything from start to finish just felt nice. So much so that you could easily go through this whole story and not even recognize the talented architecture that goes down underneath it. Everything that's there within plain sight, but Fujimoto would never explicitly state it to you. He would want you to find it on its own. He would want you to explore the avenues of these characters and their thoughts and their architecture to a deeper extent if you felt willed to. So when you mix the mysteriousness of characters' fates, whether they will live or die, with the beautiful design philosophy of all of them that allows so much exploration in your own time to really unravel and fall in love with that character further, what you get is an endearing, lovable soul. Something that keeps you coming back, something that keeps you talking about Chainsaw Man, something that wants to make you a part of the Chainsaw Man community. And that's exactly what happened. While this story progressed further and further into its narrative, into its characters, and twisting everything and killing them off like flies, the community would grow. It would bloom and discussions would take place. And before you knew it, it had spread like a wildfire to YouTube videos, to Twitter communities, to Discords, to everything. Everyone had their eyes on Chainsaw Man and everyone wanted to talk about Chainsaw Man. When you have such a viral point to all of the things that goes within Chainsaw Man's narrative, everything is so easily shareable. This character passed away, share it, let's talk about it. This character done something insanely cool or sacrificed something, share it, talk about it. And this happened periodically within Chainsaw Man. And it's not just for the cool things either. It's not just for the powerful moments or the deathly moments, but the emotional moments, the sadness, the beautiful, depressive states of emotion that feel so overwhelming and beautifully conceptualized. All of this was being discussed every single day, and on a weekly basis, it would ramp up exponentially once again on the release of that chapter. And what made it even more impressive in those conversations is that this was by an author that had not seen fame before. Fire Punch was his original work. work, his previous serialization, and while it was successful within its own merits, it was never famous. It was never globally recognized or even accepted. Funny enough, there was even a massive part of that story that a lot of people didn't like. A lot of disappointment or negativity thrown towards it because of how Fujimoto approached his style of storytelling. And while with Chainsaw Man, it's definitely been more fine-tuned and reduced down to a simmer to extrapolate all of the more flavorful moments within his writing, it hasn't completely changed. There's noticeable differences, but it's still kind of similar. Now see, this type of polish is a cornerstone for authors wanting to evolve and to change and to learn and experience new things, and this is exactly what Fujimoto done. The jump between Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man is polish, but the jump between Chainsaw Man and Chainsaw Man Part 2 is exponential. It's evolution. See, even though it's been 4 years with Chainsaw Man's story, there is less than 100 chapters of that main experience. And yes, it provides a healthy, strong foundation. And while that story ends in a very beautiful way, and you could easily close all the ties off there was more to be had. And while the story rapid fires through a lot of characters being killed off, a lot of moments being thrown up into the air, and really pushing forward towards that ending to something rather satisfactory, you could conclude it there, but you'll notice that there is ties that Fujimoto put in to continue it further. Before we would see what more actually is, we would take a very big break, about 1.5 years, I believe, and it wouldn't be complete silence. We would see one-shots, short stories from Fujimoto, just writing whatever he feels like, and these would be some of the best pieces of material that he has written throughout his career. While Chainsaw Man has skyrocketed him into fame and success and has built such a supportive community, these one-shots would turn him into an icon. These one-shots would make him legendary. I would say that a lot of authors don't have the opportunity to write a lot of different stories. Maybe they feel nervous, maybe they can't, maybe they feel worn out, or maybe they just feel happy with the single massive story that they've created, and that's perfectly fine. But Fujimoto seems to not care about any of that. If anything, Chainsaw Man just felt like another story similar to how Fire Punch was just another story prior, and these one-shots would be where he truly shines, being so incredibly creative and unique and refreshing and showing how much versatility he truly had. This would do a couple of different things for Fujimoto as an author, but for Chainsaw Man as a story. Firstly, it would turn Fujimoto into a legend, an absolutely iconic author, being praised by other iconic authors for these short stories, and massively push him further into stardom. But what it would do for Chainsaw Man is redefine its material. Now it would be re-looked at, re-examined, and everything that Fujimoto has learned from these short stories, from this 1.5 years of a hiatus and experimenting and learning new things, would be applied to Chainsaw Man once again, but in a completely different way. And after waiting for what felt like an eternity, Part 2 would arrive. Denji is nowhere to be seen. It's a completely new character, but it feels oddly familiar. It feels like the beginning of Chainsaw Man, just different, just with more awareness, just with more sensitivity. The way that Fujimoto has been able to build such a beautiful connection for Asa and Yoru to us as a community is actually insane. It's not often that you can create such a lovable main character like Denji and the cast of characters that are equally loved, to then be halfly replaced by a character that is brand new, by a character that is different. And I think we can all say that it paid off perfectly. Asa and Yoru has become personally one of my favorite characters within the Chainsaw Man universe. The amount of finesse that Fujimoto has towards her, the amount of love, care and ingenuity that goes into crafting her emotions, the complexity behind it, the goofy, relatable moments that a lot of people can fall in love with is just admirable. It's fascinating to see her grow and contort, but also combine with now Denji that has been reintroduced into the story. That too feels even more refined, that feels polished and refreshed and ultimately new. While Part 1 and Part 2 may feel thematically quite different, and you may be disappointed that it no longer has that oomph or power or destructiveness as the original, it makes up for it with its finesse, with its outstanding love that is poured into its characters, into its world, into its emotional vulnerability. But it too is now providing mystery. It too is now providing the unknown. And more you're seeing that oomph, that destructive chaoticness start to return. It is drip fed into the story to spike your interest, to keep you hooked. The Chainsaw Man experience is undoubtedly lovable, and I'm thankful for all the days that it has given us. We could all rattle off some of the most heartbreaking, powerful, chaotic moments within part 1 and probably even part 2, and that's exactly what I want you to do. Between part 1 and part 2, what are some of your favorite moments within the story? Some deaths, some fights, some beautiful character designs, anything. I want to hear your thoughts right now. Thank you.